This budget is inevitably encompassed by Brexit and by productivity. And I think this is where the challenge is. The OBR has very gloomy forecasts on productivity, and these lead to a reduction in potential output in 2021-22 by 3%. And the challenge for the architects of our economic future is how do they make Brexit work to ensure that we get a productivity boost. And this is where I was so encouraged by what the Chancellor had to say, because he said this was going to be a free trade government. And this is the real opportunity that comes from Brexit. It is to open up our markets to the rest of the world freely. We have to remember that the customs union, which the honourable gentleman, the member for Nottingham East, is so keen to stay in, is actually a protectionist union that stops people in the United Kingdom buying the cheapest available goods and, by and large, protects industry that the UK does not have. The overwhelming majority of the protection under the customs union is for things like German coffee processors or Spanish orange growers, those types of things that we are not doing. Our industries receive very marginal protection from the customs union, but it is a very high cost to British consumers. It is thought that the cost of food is 20%, and the next highest level of tariffs comes on clothing and footwear. And the opportunity here for the poorest in our society to see their standard of living boost, their real wages rise, is really quite fundamental. That it will mean that their weekly, monthly, annual expenditure will be reduced, their real income will rise, and this will make available funds for other expenditures or indeed for saving and reinvestment in British industry. But equally, it will mean that because we lose the cosy protectionism, we cease to subsidise continental inefficient businesses, we also ensure that we concentrate on what we are best at. And that ought to lead of itself to a boost in productivity. And indeed, this is the lesson of history of when you move to free trade and the removal not only of formal tariffs, but also of non-tariff barriers. And this, Mr. Speaker, if things go correctly and the correct policies are adopted, is where the £350 million a week can ultimately be provided for the National Health Service. The figures produced by Professor Patrick Minford and his very distinguished team at Cardiff University indicate that there will be a boon of £135 billion between 2020 and 2025 and £40 billion a year after, which will be possible to have both tax cuts and make it possible to fund the health service. And it's very encouraging to see that the Chancellor has already begun this process and is making more money available for the health service at this stage, because I think it's important that politicians deliver on the spirit of their promises as well as on the detailed, pettifogging, nitpicking, small print element of their promises. So I think it is right that that should be made possible, and having a free trade development of economic policy is going to be crucial to that, and it's very welcome that the Chancellor has put this in his budget speech today. The other thing that is, of course, of greatest issue and importance to our voters is the issue of housing. And here I would encourage the Chancellor to go further. I think it is absolutely right that we have more house building. It is absolutely right that the government is supporting that. But the key to it is going to be reform of the planning system. The thing that makes housing so expensive in this country is that supply is controlled. As the Chancellor rightly said in his budget speech, actions to help demand are merely likely to put prices up. And what we need is to see prices, at least in relation to incomes, come down, and that means increasing supply, and to increase supply in a way that people want to live. And therefore the one question I would raise on the budget, Mr. Speaker, is that the Chancellor said he would look to ensure that the housing was primarily in an urban setting. But actually, when you ask people what housing do they want to live in, they say 80% of people say they want to live in houses with gardens. And this means we are going to have to build on green fields, and it would be wise to review the green belt, because there are some areas of it that are not actually essential to life and the pursuit of happiness. What we really want, Mr. Speaker, I think, is a whole succession of poundries across the country, because that's what people want to live in, and I think the Conservative Party should be on the side not only of the Prince of Wales, but also of the...
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.